The day my mother canceled my wedding behind my back, she didn't just call Ivy House, she forged my signature, drained my savings, and funneled the money into my sister's failing boutique. I didn't know any of that yet. All I heard was her voice, steady and cruel. "We're not funding this circus." Then Brielle smirked. Dad adjusted his tie, and the world I'd built collapsed in silence. I didn't scream. I didn't beg. I just said one word understood. They thought it meant surrender. But they had no idea that fake signature, that missing money, and one forgotten voicemail would expose everything they'd been hiding. Before I go any further, tell me where you're watching from. And hit like and subscribe if you've ever been betrayed by your own family, because what happened to me wasn't just a ruined wedding, it was a warning. If any part of this feels familiar, stay close. You're about to see exactly how far a family will go to protect their lies. I grew up in a house that looked perfect. From the outside, white shutters, polished brick, a lawn trimmed so evenly it looked artificial. But inside, everything ran on rules. Rules about how to speak, how to dress, how to behave, how to stay small. My mother called it standards. I later learned it was control dressed up as class. One of my earliest memories is a summer dinner where the air conditioner rattled like it was trying to escape. Mom served Brielle first, piling chicken into her bowl like she was feeding a favorite guest. When she reached me, only thin broth slid out. I stirred it quietly, pretending I didn't notice. But the moment branded itself into me like a quiet bruise. Mom always treated Brielle like a spotlight, and treated me like the shadow that kept the lighting balanced. In 4th grade, I won an art contest, my hand-drawn wedding gown shaded in metallic pencil. I ran home clutching the certificate. But that night, Brielle had won a cheerleading ribbon, and Mom staged a whole photo session for her in front of the fireplace. When I tried to show my certificate, Mom gave me a smile that never touched her eyes. "Don't brag, sweetheart. It's tacky." I slipped the certificate into a drawer. It stayed there for years. Holidays followed the same script. One Christmas, Dad surprised Brielle with a brand new laptop. I got a planner. "You like organizing?" Mom said, already turning away. I laughed it off, but every quiet dismissal pressed deeper, carving out a space inside me where resentment slowly grew roots. By high school, sketching had become my refuge. Nights were my favorite, everyone asleep. House silent, my lamp glowing softly as I filled page after page with dresses I knew no one would ever see. I hid the sketchbook beneath my mattress like contraband. Until Mom found it. She called me downstairs with a tone that made my scalp tighten. She stood beside the trash bin, holding my sketchbook between 2 fingers like it was something rotten. "What is this supposed to be?" "My designs," I whispered. "No one makes a living drawing dresses. You need a real future." She dropped it straight into the trash. The sound wasn't loud, but it hit like a slap. Dad stood behind her, adjusting his tie, his signature gesture when discomfort threatened to break the facade. He never defended me. Not once. I wanted to dig the sketchbook out to say something, anything. Instead, I breathed in the lemon cleaner air and muttered the word that had become my survival mechanism, understood. That word would chain me for years. When it was time for college, I wanted fashion design or creative marketing. Mom printed brochures for accounting, stable, respectable, boring. She slid them across the table like a verdict. "You're smart, Madison. Don't waste it." I didn't agree, but I didn't fight either. Because in our house, fighting wasn't an option. Fighting meant consequences, cold silences, cutting comments, long lectures about gratitude. So I swallowed my dreams and followed the path she laid out for me, one practical decision at a time. I told myself it was temporary, that someday I'd circle back to what I loved. I didn't know yet how deeply that choice would haunt me or how easily my family would later weaponize it against me. After college, I moved back home for a year to save money. I thought adulthood might shift the family dynamic, that maybe Mom would finally see me as more than the responsible one she could control. I was wrong. If anything, her grip tightened. I felt it every Sunday at our ritual dinner, the one event no one was ever allowed to miss. Mom would style Brielle like a storefront mannequin, choosing her dress, her lipstick, even her earrings. Then she'd look at me and say, "Something neutral, Madison. You look calmer in beige." Calm. That was her word for invisible. I'd sit across from Brielle's perfectly curated glow, listening to Mom praise every breath she took. Dad would sip his wine, nod, adjust his tie. He was always adjusting that tie. Silence wasn't peaceful in our house, it was punishment. When Brielle opened Brielle and Bloom, Mom treated it like the second coming. She transformed the backyard into a boutique launch party, string lights draped over every tree, champagne chilled in silver buckets. Guests floated through the yard offering lazy compliments about Brielle's eye for fashion. I stood near the dessert table helping refill trays unnoticed. Then Mom clinked her glass. Brielle has always had incredible taste. Some people are just born with it. People cheered. Brielle beamed. I felt something twist low in my stomach. Not jealousy, just the sting of knowing I'd never been allowed to want what she was being handed. What I didn't know then was that some of the designs hanging in Brielle's boutique were painfully familiar because they'd once lived in my sketchbook. Life shifted only when I met Ethan. It was at a local fundraiser, boxes of canned food stacked to the ceiling, the smell of cardboard and chili simmering in the kitchen. He walked in laughing with a group of volunteers, sleeves rolled up, hair slightly messy like he didn't take himself too seriously. He asked what I was working on and then stayed beside me the whole night, sorting donations and cracking small jokes that made my nerves settle. For the first time in years, my shoulders dropped. Someone actually saw me. We talked for hours about art, movies, dumb childhood stories. Nothing forced. Nothing performative. A week later, we went for coffee. A month later, we were inseparable. And for the first time, I started imagining a future that didn't revolve around my family's expectations. Bringing him home should have been a happy milestone. Instead, it was a warning sign I didn't recognize. Mom's smile stuck halfway, like she was trying to hide her disappointment behind politeness. "What do you do?" she asked, voice sharp enough to peel paint. Ethan explained his nonprofit work mentoring kids, building community programs. Work that actually mattered. "How admirable," Mom said, tone cold enough to frost the air. Brielle leaned in and whispered. Translation broke. We left early that night. Ethan held my hand on the drive home. He didn't push me to talk. He just let me breathe. For 3 years, he stayed by my side through every snide comment, every comparison, every subtle reminder that in my family's eyes, I'd always be second place. But with Ethan, I finally felt something steady, something real. A wedding at the Ivy House became our shared dream. Something small, intimate, ours. And for a moment, I let myself believe that maybe, just maybe, life was finally shifting. I didn't know the storm had already started gathering and that my family was standing in the center of it, holding the match. The closer we got to the wedding, the more my family behaved like it was their event, not mine. Every week brought a new line I was expected not to cross. Every dinner felt like an ambush wrapped in linen napkins and forced smiles. One Sunday evening, the dining room felt unusually stiff, like the air had been ironed flat. Mom set the table with her best china, her silent way of announcing she wanted control. Ethan and I sat across from her, Brielle, already swirling wine in her glass like she owned the room. So Mom began cutting her roast chicken with sharp, deliberate strokes. "Tell us how much you earn at that nonprofit again. I just want to understand what you're walking into." Ethan stayed polite. "I make enough, and I love what I do." A thin smile crossed her face. "Love doesn't pay for a family, dear, or a mortgage, or a future." Brielle smirked. "At least he's cute." Heat crawled up my neck. "Can we not do this?" Mom looked at me as if I'd interrupted her sermon. "I'm asking responsible questions, Madison. Someone has to." The room shrank. Dad adjusted his tie, his only contribution, while Ethan reached for my hand under the table. We left early that night, the uneaten dessert lingering like an apology no one gave. I didn't know it then, but that night was the first cut. 2 weeks later, Mom called me alone, telling me to come discuss the wedding. The moment I walked into the dining room, I felt the shift. The chandelier glowed too bright, illuminating her disappointment before she even spoke. "You ignored my suggestions," she said. "You suggested adding 30 people I don't know, a floral arch that costs more than our rent, and a band I never asked for." "They're important people," she snapped. "People who matter." "To you," I said. "Not to me." Her mouth tightened. "You're being ungrateful." I inhaled slowly. "We're paying for the wedding ourselves. That's exactly why you should listen. You can't afford mistakes." It wasn't advice. It was a warning, disguised as concern. I left the house feeling something shift in me, something I'd kept buried for years. That night, Ethan paced our living room. "There's something I didn't want to tell you," he said. "Your mom cornered me." What did she do? She offered to pay for the entire wedding and every cent if I signed her She said that she said it was for protection. But Matt, this isn't interference anymore. This is planning. We processed it under the form with your signature. My pulse pounded so loudly I barely heard the rest. Send it to me. Now. When the email came through, my vision narrowed. The signature at the bottom, my name was shaky, slanted nothing like my handwriting. It looked rushed, fake, brazen. Someone had erased my wedding. Someone believed I'd do nothing about it. I left work without telling anyone. The world outside felt too bright, too loud. I sat in my car for several minutes, gripping the steering wheel until my fingers numbed. Only one thought cut through the haze. If they were willing to forge my name, this wasn't the beginning. This was the middle. And whatever had started it wasn't just sabotage. It was a cover-up. When I got home, Ethan opened the door before I could knock. One look at my face, and he didn't ask a single question, just wrapped his arms around me while I tried to breathe through the shock. "They canceled it," I whispered. "They forged my name." His jaw locked. "Your parents." I didn't answer. I didn't need to. That night, after Ethan fell asleep on the couch, I sat alone at the kitchen table, the soft hum of the refrigerator the only sound in the room. I pulled up our wedding spreadsheet expecting answers. Instead, I found Hole's payments logged as sent deposits, missing fees I never approved. My stomach dropped as I compared them with our bank balance. Money had been disappearing, quietly, strategically. Not toward the wedding, toward something else. I emailed Harper Nguyen, the sharpest person I knew in law or anywhere else. Her reply came in 6 minutes. "Bring everything tomorrow, 9 a.m. Harper's office was all glass and steel, too bright to hide anything. She didn't waste time on sympathy. She simply said sit and held out her hand for the documents. I watched her flip through invoices and bank statements with a precision that made me feel both exposed and relieved. "This transfer," she said, tapping one line. $5,000, labeled as marketing for Brielle and Bloom. "That's your sister's store, correct?" My throat tightened. "Yes." She flipped another page. "And these payments small, repeated, leading to a card under Daniel Cole." "My father." Harper's jaw flexed. "Maddie, they're using your money." "For what? To keep themselves afloat," she said. "Debt, loans, maybe more." My hands trembled. Not just from anger, but from clarity. The patterns were too deliberate to be accidents. Someone had counted on me not noticing. Harper leaned forward. "You're an accountant. They thought you'd look away. They thought you'd keep saying understood." I exhaled a shaky breath. Not anymore. But we still needed proof about the trust fund, the piece that tied everything together. That meant one person, Uncle Greg. We met him at a nearly empty cafe, the kind with flickering neon lights and a constant smell of burnt espresso. Greg looked startled when he saw me, then even more startled when he saw Harper. "Maddie," he said cautiously. "What's going on?" Harper didn't ease him in. "We need to know who authorized the transfers from Madison's trust." Greg froze. The coffee cup in his hand trembled. I signed some documents years back. Victoria said it was to simplify things." "I didn't think you didn't read them," Harper said flatly. He rubbed his forehead. "Your mom is persuasive. She said it was for your future. But last year I started seeing withdrawals I didn't recognize." My heartbeat thudded. "How much?" "A lot," he whispered. "More than I understood at the time. And if you had gotten married, the trust would have been audited automatically." The truth struck like a blade. They didn't just disapprove of Ethan. They canceled the wedding because it threatened to expose the theft. I swallowed hard. "So they used my trust to pay Dad's debts?" Greg nodded slowly. "And to funnel money into Brielle's store." The room blurred. I gripped my cup just to keep myself grounded. "You helped them," I whispered. I didn't know he said, shame flickering in his eyes. "But I'll testify. It's time someone stops her." We stepped outside into a gray, heavy sky. The air smelled like rain and asphalt. Everything inside me felt rearranged, jagged, unfamiliar, but sharper than before. Harper walked beside me. "We have enough to file," she said quietly. "But once we move forward, there's no going back." I stared at the pavement, then lifted my head with a steadiness I hadn't felt in years. "There's nothing left to go back to." This time, I didn't whisper the word my family taught me to say. I didn't say understood. I said file it. And for the first time, the silence belonged to me. The courtroom felt colder than any room I'd ever stepped into. Polished floors, hard benches, fluorescent lights humming with a kind of sterile indifference. I sat beside Harper, hands clasped, file edges cutting into my palms. Across the aisle, my family huddled together like strangers forced into a portrait. Mom's posture was perfect. Brielle looked terrified. Dad's tie was crooked for the first time in his life. The clerk called the case. Cole versus Cole. Harper rose steady as stone. Your Honor, this case involves forgery, unauthorized transactions, and the misuse of my client's trust fund. She laid down the forged cancellation form. The judge leaned forward, frowning at the shaky signature. Then she presented the payment trail, money pulled from my account, redirected into Brielle, and Bloom siphoned into Dad's debts. Each document felt like a match striking. Victoria's attorney attempted his spin. Mrs. Cole acted only out of maternal concern. She feared her daughter was making an unstable marital choice. Harper didn't let him finish. Let's hear Mrs. Cole's own words. She connected her laptop to the court speaker. A single click. Then my mother's voice filled the room, unmistakably cold. Cancel it. Yes, I know there's a fee. Just do it. This circus isn't happening. She'll get over it, she always does. Mom's face drained of color. She shut up. That was private. Sit down, the judge commanded. Harper continued as if nothing happened. Next witness. Uncle Greg walked to the stand, shoulders tense but resolute. Harper asked, Did you transfer management of Madison's trust to Victoria Cole? Yes, he admitted. She said it was routine. I believed her. Did you later discover unauthorized withdrawals? He nodded once. Regular ones. Used for Daniel Cole's debts. And Brielle's boutique. Brielle let out a small gasp with a sound sharp enough to echo. Dad lowered his head, rubbing his temples. Harper stepped aside. Your witness. Victoria's attorney tried, but Greg didn't falter, and the more he spoke, the more the truth tightened around my family like ropes. Finally, Harper called my mother to the stand. Victoria walked forward as if the courtroom was beneath her. She sat, lifted her chin, and answered with rehearsed calm, or what she hoped passed for it. Harper asked, Did you submit the cancellation form? No, Mom lied. I never would. Even though your voice is on the Ivy House recording. A tremor flicked across her face. I was trying to protect her. That boy. Say his name, Harper said. Ethan Miller. Mom's jaw clenched. He isn't good enough. I wasn't going to let my daughter throw away her life. I finally spoke, my voice steady, cutting clean through the air. My life was mine to throw away. Mom whipped toward me. Everything we did was for you. Then why did you steal from me, I asked. Why did you use my future to fix your mess? She stared at me like she'd never seen me before. The judge cleared his throat. The room went silent. This court finds in favor of the plaintiff. All funds will be returned immediately. Additional damages awarded $50,000. Mom collapsed into her chair. Brielle whispered Mom through tears. Dad didn't move. I didn't cry, I didn't shake, I just breathed. For the first time in my life, their silence didn't cage me. It freed me. Stepping out of the courthouse felt like stepping into a different season. The air was crisp, bright, unfiltered by anyone else's expectations. I stood at the top of the stairs, letting the sunlight hit my face. For months, I'd been fighting to breathe. Now my lungs finally worked again. Ethan walked beside me, steady and warm. He didn't say congrats. Didn't say we won. He just slipped his hand into mine like the world had clicked back into place. A week later, I returned to Ivy House, not as the daughter whose wedding had been erased, but as the woman rebuilding it on her own terms. The garden lights glowed softly. Linen tablecloths fluttered in the breeze, and everything felt simple, intentional. Hours. When the music began, I walked myself down the aisle. No mother straightening my veil, no father offering tradition. Just me. Each step felt like reclaiming a part of myself I'd lost piece by piece over the years. The ceremony was small, quiet, honest. When Ethan and I said our vows, I didn't think about the version of me my family wanted, only the version I had fought to become. After the reception, I slipped outside for air. The oak tree where I once cried seemed different now, less like a witness to my collapse, and more like a marker of where I'd chosen to stand back up. I wasn't angry anymore. Anger burns too fast. What I felt now was clarity, solid, steady, earned. 2 days later, the phone calls started. Mom first, then Dad, then Brielle. Their voices blurred together in voicemail after voicemail. We want to talk. Your father lost his job. The boutique is tanking. We need help. For the first time, their urgency didn't pull me in. It pushed me further away. One night, after the 10th missed call, I typed a single message. The circus is already full. I didn't wait for a reply. I closed the phone, poured a glass of wine, and opened a brand new sketchbook. Blank pages, clean starts. Lines formed easily beneath my pencil, crisp and deliberate. Designs that were finally mine again. Madison Cole Studio, a future untouched by them. They thought they'd broken me. They didn't realize they'd given me the one thing I had never had, a life that belonged only to me. If you've ever felt like the outsider in your own family, make sure you subscribe before you go. Stories like mine aren't just for entertainment, they're reminders that choosing yourself is sometimes the only way to survive. And if anything you heard tonight hit a nerve, tell me where you're watching from. Share your story in the comments. Someone out there needs to hear it. This chapter might be closed, but trust me, there's always another twist, another truth, another family secret waiting to surface.